Now your burden's lifted, carry far away. Precious blood has washed away the stain.
You're listening to a message presented at New Market Christian Church. We're located at 300 South 3rd Street in New Market, Indiana. We meet for Sunday school at 9 o'clock and for worship at 10 o'clock each Sunday morning. If you do not have a church home, we'd love to invite you to join us here at New Market Christian Church. And now, a message by Dr. Gary Snowden.
When you walk, sometimes we fall. So fall on Jesus.
The title of this morning's message, Our God is an Awesome God. Just kind of recap to bring you up to speed of where we are. By this time in Jesus' ministry, the disciples had been with him for over 2 years. I mean, day and night, working with him, walking with him, studying with him. He's been leading them. It's like he's their rabbi and teaching them what they need to know. They've heard his words, and they have seen his awesome works. He's been training them this entire time, preparing them this entire time, and finally, just a chapter or so ago, he pushed them out of the nest, so to speak, whenever he sent them out 2 by 2. If you remember, he empowered them, gave them the ability to cast out demons and work miracles. And in the process, he also challenged their faith. They would take absolutely nothing with them. Nothing to take care of them on their journey. They were to trust God to supply their needs through his people, the ones that they were serving and sharing the gospel with. Can you imagine how excited this group of men must have been when their mission came to a close and they came back face to face with Jesus? I mean, they had been casting out demons, and that was impressive to them. They had healed sick people, and that was impressive to them. These guys had their personal needs met in exactly the way Jesus said they needed to be met. This was one group of excited men when they got back to where Jesus was. But Jesus knew what it was like to be on an evangelistic tour. He had been doing it for quite some time. He knew how tired it made someone. He knew that this group of disciples were exhausted. So he tried to carve out some time for them just to relax and to rest and to recharge. But the crowds, they weren't having it. Not at all. They spied on Jesus, so to speak. And then they flocked to the location where he and his disciples were hoping to find a bit of reprieve. We're told that Jesus, when he saw the crowds gathered there to the place they were planning to rest, when Jesus saw the crowds, it says he had compassion on them. He had compassion on the crowds. They were like sheep without a shepherd. And he shared his words with them. And eventually, he shared his works with them when he fed the entire crowd with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. The crowd was so excited that they wanted to make him their king. I mean, they thought, this is really cool. Jesus has the ability to heal people. He has the ability to teach people. He has the ability to cast out demons. He has the ability to make food and feed people. This guy would make a great king. They wanted to crown him king. But Jesus didn't want that at all. He had not come to establish an earthly kingdom, but a heavenly one that would last for all eternity. So in order to avoid the drama of them trying to make him king, he hurriedly sent his disciples away in their boat. And then Jesus himself, it says, went up on a mountainside to spend some time with his Father in prayer. And that's where we pick up the story today in the book of Mark. We're going to be reading here, firstly, Mark chapter 6, verses 47 to 49, as we get rolling. What it says there in Mark chapter 6, verse 47 through 49 is this. When evening came, he just sent them away on the boat. When evening came, the boat was in the middle of the lake, the Sea of Galilee, and Jesus was alone on the land. And he saw the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. About the 4th watch of the night, he went out to them walking on the lake. Did you catch that? He went out to them walking on the lake. And he was about to pass them by. But when they saw him walking on the lake, they thought he was a ghost. And they cried out. I can imagine. I'd probably feel the same way if I was on a fishing boat someplace and someone just came walking across the water next to me. I'd probably be a little freaked out. You know, this story is also found in the book of Matthew, chapter 14, verses 22 to 33. And in Matthew, he tells us about Peter asking to get out of the boat and walk to him. It's also found in the book of John, chapter 6, verses 15 to 21. And that's where you find that the people wanted to make Jesus king. And we're studying there in the book of Mark. We're trying to roll all these things together so we can get a full account of what was happening at this particular time. In Matthew's account, Peter gets out, tries to walk on the water, but he takes his eyes off of Jesus, and you know what happens. When he began to look at the storm rather than the Savior, he began to sink. And he said, "Save me, Lord." And Jesus reached out his hand, pulled him up, and took him back to the boat. In John's account, it's very clear. These people knew Jesus was something special. And they wanted him to lead them, not in the way he wanted to lead, but in the way they wanted to be led. They wanted him to conquer Rome and set up the Jews as the ruling nation of the world, to put them in charge of everything. That's what they desired. That's what they thought was going to happen when the Messiah came. But that was not what Jesus came to do. Now here's the thing you need to understand. Jesus had told these disciples to get in that boat and head out across the Sea of Galilee. This wasn't some stubborn, self-willed act on the part of the disciples. They didn't just decide to go out for a sightseeing tour across the Sea of Galilee. They were doing exactly what Jesus had told them to do. Have you got that picture? He said, "Go," and so they went. Even though they were squarely within the will of God. You got that picture? Doing exactly what Jesus asked them to do, they found themselves struggling against the storm. I think we can learn a lot from this. It is sometimes God's will. It is sometimes God's plan to take us through the storm. And that's uncomfortable. That's uncomfortable to think about. In fact, I'm guessing that there are those sitting out here today who are wondering why through the storm. Jesus, why don't you take us around the storm. Help us miss this thing. Why not help us just pass this storm by? And the answer is that the storms in life are part of the preparation process. Preacher, where do you get that? What do storms have to do with preparation? Oh, let me take you over to the book of James, chapter 1, verses 2 to 4. The book of James, chapter 1, verses 2 to 4. What it says there is, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." Well, that was most certainly the case with this boatload of disciples. They're giving it their all. They're facing this storm head on. They know they're doing exactly what Jesus told them to do. They are within his will, but they are fighting this storm for all they are worth, using their oars, struggling to keep the boat on course. But Jesus doesn't seem to get in a big fizz at all. In fact, as we read through that text and you put it all into context, it's pretty amazing. We're told that he saw them struggling from a distance, out in the middle of the lake in the evening. You know, evening, the sun's just starting to go down. The evening, that's when he saw them out there in the distance. Still light enough he could see them out in the middle of the lake. I mean, it's evening. He sees them struggling. But he doesn't get in a fizz and run out and help them. He doesn't speak and calm the storm. He lets the storm rage, and he lets them fight the storm. When the time is right, Jesus headed across the stormy sea to take care of the situation. Now here's the thing we need to understand. When the time is right, Jesus will head across the stormy seas to help us as well. Whenever we're looking at everything and thinking, how in the world can I get through this? Whenever the storms are battering us and we're feeling like we just can't keep going, when the time is right, Jesus will come to us. In today's text, It seems Jesus plans to just meander on by the disciples. I mean, he's just walking across the water, just chucking along the way until the disciples see him, and they are terrified. When they saw him, someone walking on the water in the distance, I mean, they had all kinds of things going through their mind. But the main one is, this has got to be a ghost, because people don't do that. You don't just go out walking across the water. It's got to be a ghost. The word used here means a specter, an apparition, an illusion. It's something strange. It's something they don't understand, something they can't wrap their minds around. How can that be? When they saw Jesus in the distance, not knowing who it was, they were terrified. Let's read on there, Mark chapter 6, verse 50. Because they all saw him and were terrified, immediately he spoke to them and said, "Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid." Yeah, here's the good thing. When everything was overwhelming, when they were scared to death, Jesus didn't just leave them hanging. He spoke to them. He spoke to their hearts. He let them know he was the one walking on the sea. He was the one coming to the rescue. He saw their fear and he used his words to calm them. He simply said, "Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid." And then I love this. It's me. Hey guys, it's me. It's here that Matthew inserts the story of Peter asking to walk to Jesus on the water. I'd like to read that to you this morning just to fill in some of the blanks that Mark left and paint a complete picture. In Matthew chapter 14, verses 28 to 33, we read these words, the story expounded upon. It says there, beginning in verse number 28 of the book of Matthew chapter 14, "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they had climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." I keep hearing that over and over. Truly, you are the Son of God. They keep saying it, but they don't seem to get it. They keep saying it, they give it verbiage, but they can't seem to get it inside their minds and inside their hearts. Now, I'm not going to elaborate on Peter walking on the water because that deserves a sermon of its own. I'm not going to do that right now. I just wanted to make sure that you heard the rest of the story so that we didn't come up short there in the book of Mark. We added in what Matthew had to say and what John had to say. Let's get back to the book of Mark by reading verses 51 and 52. It says there in verses 51 and 52, "Then he climbed into the boat with them, and the wind died down, and they were completely amazed. For they had not understood about the loaves. Their hearts were hardened." We're told that all of this astounded Jesus' disciples. How could it be? How could he walk on the water? How could he calm the storms? He must be God. That's what they're thinking. They heard Jesus' words. They had seen Jesus' works. They had even been given the power to do some of these awesome things themselves. But down deep inside, down deep in their innermost self, they still didn't get the whole picture. The implication of Jesus' words was clear. If they had understood the power behind the feeding of the multitudes, they would not have been astounded because they would have knew the power Jesus wielded. If they hadn't got the bread thing, they would understand this thing. In the breaking of the bread, Jesus revealed the power of God that was at his disposal. When you can take 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish and feed the multitudes, that is awesome. But their hearts were hard. They didn't wrap their minds around the whole thing. They were blinded to the reality of who Jesus was. They were blinded to the power that he was capable of wielding. Jesus was using the storm to do exactly what Jesus encouraged James to tell us he would do. He was using the storm to prepare his disciples. He used the storm to teach them, to enlighten them, to help them understand that he is exactly who he claimed to be. He is the Son of God, God come in the flesh. He has the power of God wielded through him. Jesus was God come in the flesh. God, man, if you will. The disciples needed to face the storm. It was part of the training. Jesus was going to use this storm and their struggle to teach them. And I believe in our lives, God is going to at times send the storms as well. We're going to be straining at the oars, making very little progress, and there's going to be times that we're going to feel all alone, and we're asking ourselves, wondering in our minds, wondering in our hearts, where are you, Jesus? Where are you? It's going to seem like Jesus is just ignoring us. But when the time is right, Jesus will use the storm to help us become all he desires for us to be. And he does this because our God is an awesome God. Let's read on there in Mark chapter 6, verses 53 to 56. When they had crossed over, they landed at Gennesaret and anchored there. As soon as they got out of the boat, people recognized Jesus. These folks had seen Jesus before. You remember the story. They had seen him before. They had experienced him before. The stir he caused last time was extremely memorable. The word picture being painted here is that of dozens, maybe even hundreds of pitiful people flocking to Jesus, seeking help, bringing the sick, the destitute, those who were down and out, those with physical ailments inside of them. They were bringing them all to the feet of Jesus. Now, the last time Jesus was here, he cast a legion of demons out of a crazy tomb dweller. Remember the story a few weeks ago? At that time, the folks in the Decapolis area had chased Jesus away. They ran him right out of their territory. If you'll recall, Jesus told the man that he had rescued from the tombs, you go back to your home and you tell people your story. Tell them what I've done for you. That dude must have been one awesome storyteller. Because the folks who chased Jesus off were now coming to him in droves. Their hearts had changed. They wanted to fully experience the words and the works of Jesus. And as a result, they were bringing all the sick and the needy to him. They'd seen his power, and now they were ready to experience it firsthand. No more chasing him off, but rather welcoming Jesus into their community. And that brings us to Mark chapter 6, verses 55 to 56. They ran throughout the whole region, carried the sick on mats to where they heard he was. And wherever he went into the villages, towns, or countryside, they placed the sick in the marketplaces. They begged him to let them touch even the edge of his cloak. And all who touched him were healed. Did you get that? I am impressed by this huge turnout. The once demon-possessed man had gone out and told his story. And he had changed the hearts and minds of people in the area of the Decapolis. A once venomous crowd was now falling over one another to get to Jesus, the one they had just a short time ago chased out of their territory. They were not disappointed either. When they got to Jesus, they were healed. It was amazing. In fact, Jesus was walking through the towns, through the markets. Folks were reaching out and touching his garment, and just like the woman with the issue of blood, when they touched his garments, they were healed. Friends, I'm telling you, our God is an awesome God. One thing remains constant in the ministry of Jesus. He meets all those in need where they are, and he restores them. He provides to them what is needed. He constantly reveals God's amazing grace to people. So where are you today? I mean, it's a story, right? But where are you? Because this story should have an effect on our lives. What do you need Jesus to do for you? What are you struggling with? Does this virus have you stuck in unfamiliar territory? You're thinking to yourself, man, I'm not seeing the kids like I used to see them. Our family's not getting together like it used to. Church isn't like it used to be. It's hard to go to the grocery. I can't get a doctor's appointment. I'm overwhelmed by it all. Anyone else feeling all that? It's kind of what's going on right now. How about this? Are the changing chapters of your life terrifying you? They're sure giving me some unease. I'll tell you what, I can't figure out how I got to be a senior citizen. Just last year I was learning how to drive and just couldn't wait to get behind the wheel. And the next thing I know, I'm blinking. I got old. It just happened. How is it possible that my kids have kids? How is it possible that some of my grandkids are nearing their teenage years? How is that even possible? I don't get it. How have I lived so long and still accomplished so little? You ever wonder those things? How about this? What's the next chapter in life going to look like? What will it be like whenever I reach the point that I can no longer preach, that people say, time for you to go out to pasture, old preacher? Will we have enough to live on? How are we going to enter our sunset years? I mean, it's changing chapters of life. They can be just a little bit terrifying. Every time I walk into that house I'm working on, I take one look at it and I think to myself, we're retiring there? What is wrong with us? I mean, things become terrifying as we live our lives. It's just a reality. The storms are going to come. And Jesus is not always going to take us around them. He's going to take us through them in order that we can learn, grow, and develop into what he wants us to be. And just like Jesus told his disciples, he's speaking to us today. Don't be afraid. It's me. Don't be afraid. I'm God. Don't be afraid. I've got this. I'm the one who calms the storm. I'm the one who feeds the multitudes. I'm the one who cares for the birds of the air and the flowers of the field. And if I care for them, you know I'm going to care for you, because you're much more important than a bird. I'm the one, Jesus says, who spoke the galaxies into existence. I'm the one who's got you. Your God's an awesome God. There's no challenge too big if you'll give me your hand and make a choice to walk with me. Are the storms of life battering you? Are you tired of rowing? Wherever you are, with whatever you're facing, I want you to know our God is an awesome God. He's eager to meet your needs and mine. He wants us to tell our story, how we came to know him, how he's changed our lives. He wants us to tell his story, how he came to earth, died on the cross, rose again, is preparing a place for us, and is coming again. He wants us to be part of changing minds and hearts of men, just like that once demon-possessed man did in the Decapolis. If Jesus can use a once demon-possessed man, not possessed by one demon, but literally a legion, if he can use him, and we know that he did, he can use us. If you've not accepted Jesus' gift of grace, paid for by the blood of Jesus, there's no better time than now to make that grace your own. There's no better time than now to say, you know what, Jesus, this world's rough, but I'm just passing through. I know this isn't my home. God, you've got this. You're an awesome God. If you're ready to say, this world's not my home, I'm just passing through, I want to come and be with you forever, God, then make that known as we share in our closing hymn this day. This world is not my home. Just a passing through, my treasures are laid out somewhere beyond the blue. The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know I have no friend like you. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. They're all expecting me, and that's one thing I know. My Savior pardoned me, and now I onward go. I know He'll take me through. I am weak and poor, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know I have no friend like you. But heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? Beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. We want to say thank you for being here. Just remember, if you need to talk to me, it might be the best thing to do at this time. Call me on the phone so we can set up a time to meet and do our social distancing. It's kind of hard to have people come forward when people are in the cars and people are online and people are in here. So if you want to talk to somebody about giving your life to Christ, or if there's something that you need to just discuss, always feel free to call me at the office and we'll set up a time that we can meet. You've been listening to a message presented by Dr. Gary Snowden, minister at Newmarket Christian Church. We would love to have you come join us as we seek to worship God, love one another, and reach out to our neighbors.